experiment is about time spent by SIR students in the year 2015 to 2016 by
Amelia
and Zain.
So our question: when in the year is the most time spent on the final project? So we didn't include like the final that we have to, or our final exam project in the middle of the year, because that doesn't relate to the overall project. So we focused solely on times that related to the overarching project that we would present at Science Fair. With the data that we were given, we tried to discover when, using due dates, when between the two due dates was the most amount of work done, the most amount of hours spent doing work.
Okay, so our hypothesis, we believe that if students went by the due dates, obviously, the majority of the work was spent between the time period of October 15th and November 15th because of the review of literature and all the work that you had to use to actually get it written, like the primary resources, secondary resources, and stuff.
Yeah, there is a lot of research and a lot of work. This is our raw data. So here we have each topic, and we have the hours spent per person. We have a couple outliers that were like crazy compared to the other numbers. For example, here the average, here only one person went over 12, and this person had like 35. Here the average was something like 7, and one person had 45. So we just did that to try and it was a very broad and inconsistent data set. So we eliminated outliers to try and make it a bit easier to work with. Over there you can, so down here is our averages. Over there you can see the totals all the way on the far right for you, your far right. And on the bottom is the total average. So we have a couple graphs. We manipulate this information to create a couple different graphs. Here you can see this is just a basic percentage of time spent. We have it based on due dates. So August 11th would be right out of the gate. That's just the start of school. September 8th. August 11th is the start of school this year, I believe. Last year. September 8th is when your research proposal is due. September 8th to October 15th, that's research proposal to ordering materials. That's the October 15th was the final date for ordering materials. And then October 15th to November 15th, which took up 43.8% of the time. That would be your review of literature writing, because it was due on November 15th. And the second largest portion of time was spent between November 15th and February 12th, February 12th being when your data analysis was due. So this is over a longer period of time. This is all collecting data, doing research, all of that jazz. February 12th to February 19th, that's writing your conclusion. So that was only a small amount of time. It's also a very small amount of time spent, and also just a small amount of time. It's like a week. And then this last bit, March 4th being Science Fair, this is how much time was spent preparing for Science Fair.
Okay, so here are two more graphs. We have a line graph that shows obviously a giant spike in work, which I believe is the times of terror.
Yeah, so this represents the peak time of terror, and then you finish it, and suddenly all of it goes down. You still have all of this terror while you're collecting data, but it's spread over a longer period of time, so it's a little bit less stressful, but this is like the clear peak, and you can see over there too.
Yeah, in like this time period of 1 month, you have to work like 60 hours, so.
I believe it's like 59.9 hours spent doing work, and then the second tallest is like 40, I want to say 43 some hours spent doing work, and then compared to the rest of the time. So, like I said before, you see you have periods of calm, or here you have periods of calm, terror, little terror, calm.
I like the graph over there. The first year I used the metaphor of climbing Mount Everest, so that fits perfectly with
Yeah,
with that.
this is the mountain of work you will end up doing. So here's our data analysis.
So after we put the data in graphs and stuff, after we divided it into 6 time periods, as you can see here. And in those time periods, there are multiple parts of the project. So within October 15, November 15, for example, it wasn't just a review of literature. There was a lot of work that went into making the review of literature, and that was just the biggest due date, like in that time. So that's how we divided it.
Right. So like in October 15th, November 15th, there was bibliography, writing the review of literature, researching primary and secondary sources. In February 19th to March 4th, there was abstract and safety, practicing presentation and board for finalizing your final project. So we grouped, based on major due dates, like you said, we grouped certain tasks together so that you could get a rough more general idea of how accurately you have to spend your time, because really researching for primary and secondary sources for your review of literature sort of flows into your review of literature. You kind of spend time doing both. So we felt that it was a more accurate way of just playing the time.
And so obviously you could see these are relative to the time period. So in the first we have around like 16 hours, the second time period 8.7, the third almost 60, fourth 41. So not 43, but in the fifth about 5, and the final one 6.1. So again, you can see that there's a lot more hours in like kind of the winter part of the year, and then like fall, spring, it's kind of more relaxed, like less hours.
You'll notice also that we didn't include anything past March 4th. That is because after science fair, you don't do work, and there is no data for that. So, or you don't do any work related to your final project, as I said before. That's what we focused on, unless you plan on doing it next year. In conclusion, so we used massive amounts of varying and possibly inaccurate data to produce results that were seemingly inaccurate. Like, based on the data, they shouldn't have really been that accurate, but like, based on personal experience, I can tell you with certainty that our results are very accurate compared to like the reality. That's pretty much what it's like. So assuming that hours of work needed to do correlates with stress, we've determined that the highest point of stress occurs when the review of literature was meant to be done, because of course there are times when people extend over the deadline slightly. This agrees with our hypothesis. We assume that the highest amount of work would be done between October 15th and November 15th. Some points of error in this experiment. There was a long period of time between when the data was collected and when the event occurred. So, people's memories aren't completely accurate, so people could have overestimated or underestimated the amount of time each task took. Also, we only used 7 people. This was a fairly small group. This experiment, we learned how to analyze and interpret statistical data. So, do you want to add anything?
No.
Okay, we don't have the final end screen page, so that we're done.
Questions? So it's becoming very clear to me that I need to give you more time to write your review of lit, based on the fact that we have 20 hours per month in class on average, right? Extend the due date, or get started early. What?
Because you're reading